Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I hope you all are fine. So in the last video we completed the resting membrane potential and action potential, and we are left with one thing, that is the refractory periods. So refractory period, it is a state after a neuron has fired an action potential and another action potential cannot be easily produced. It has two types. One is the absolute refractory period and the other is the relative refractory period. So the absolute refractory period is the period during which another action potential cannot be elicited no matter how large the stimulus is, and it coincides with almost the entire duration of the action potential. So remember that the inactivation gates of the sodium channels, they are closed when the membrane potential is depolarized. Depolarization causes the opening of the activation gates of the sodium channel, but it closes the inactivation gates. So these inactivation gates, they remain closed until repolarization occurs. So no action potential can occur until inactivation gates open. So we can say that the absolute refractory period is due to inactivated sodium channels, and during this period another action potential cannot be generated no matter how large the stimulus is given. And then we have the relative refractory period, which begins at the end of the absolute refractory period and continues until the membrane potential returns to the resting level. So an action potential can be elicited during this period only if a larger than usual inward current is given. This means that after depolarization, there is a period we know that it is called the repolarization phase, and during this phase the potassium conductance is higher and the membrane potential, it becomes closer to the potassium equilibrium potential, but it is farther from the threshold potential. Now if we want to generate an action potential during this period, we need more inward current. So we can say that the relative refractory period is due to the continued outward diffusion of the potassium, and the difference between these two is that in the relative refractory period we can generate an action potential if we give more than usual inward current. If we give a large inward current, then a second action potential can occur. But in the absolute refractory period, no matter how much large the inward current is given, there will be no action potential. Okay, then there is this concept of accommodation, which occurs when the cell membrane is held at a depolarized level such that the threshold potential is passed without firing an action potential. And it occurs because depolarization closes the inactivation gates of the sodium channels. Okay, that is something we already know, that during depolarization the activation gates of the sodium channels open. So there is inward sodium current, and this inward sodium current depolarizes the membrane potential to the threshold potential and thus firing an action potential. But what happens in the accommodation, there is an example of hyperkalemia. Okay, so in hyperkalemia, less potassium diffuse out of the cell and more potassium is retaining inside the cell. And what happens to the resting membrane potential? It becomes less negative or hypopolarized or slightly depolarized. And this means that now the skeletal muscle membranes are depolarized by the high serum potassium concentration. And although the membrane potential is closer to the threshold, no action potential occur because the inactivation gates on the sodium channels, they are closed by the depolarization, and because no action potential occurs, so hyperkalemia, it leads to muscle weakness. Lastly, we have two factors by which conduction velocity can be increased. So first is the fiber size. So if we increase the diameter of the nerve fiber, it results in the decrease internal resistance, and thus conduction velocity of the nerve is faster. And the next thing is the myelination. And so myelin sheath, it is an insulator around the nerve axons. And in case of myelinated nerves, The action potential is generated only at the nodes of Renvier, which are the gaps in the myelin sheath. And this type of conduction is known as the saltatory conduction, which is only exhibited by these myelinated nerves. And this myelination actually increases the speed of the conduction. Okay, that's it for today. If you find my videos helpful, do let me know in the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.